Today's guest is Dan Wies. He's the president at Wies Offsite. So Dan, thank you for coming on the show.
Thanks for having me. Really appreciate it. Yeah.
Awesome. I look back at your history. The one thing that stands out for me, because I don't have any experience, is you're part of the clay target team.
I was. Oh man, you really did some digging. So I started shooting clay targets, right? Started when I was, probably like in 8th grade or something.
Wow.
I had a friend get me involved in that, or one of my good friends is doing it. And yeah, man, started shooting at a little 2-range trap field just south of St. Louis, or just west and south of St. Louis.
Yeah.
And yeah,
And
I
I mean,
started
you took
shooting
it to
there.
a serious level, right? I'm looking at it. It says national championship. You didn't just kind of hobby project it. You turned it into a full-blown program.
Yeah, so that was my life for about 6 years, let's call it 7 years. So, or no, actually longer than that. But anyway, yeah, maybe 8 years or so. That was my life. So I competed in our local 4-H is kind of how I got started in Missouri State 4-H and won, I guess, a state championship or two there. Went on to the nationals, qualified for the 4-H nationals. And then I got recruited to go to university. And so I got almost a full ride to go shoot at university level at my college. I went to Lindenwood University in St. Charles. And my freshman year there, then they transitioned me from a trap shooter. If you know anything about shooting,
No.
it's different games, right?
Okay.
Car. And so then I transitioned into, and I was kind of always like an all-around shooter. So there's like 5 kind of main games, you'll call it. There's sporting clays, there's trap, like conventional American trap, it's called. Then there's international trap, which actually shoots in the Olympics. And then there's American skeet, and then there's international skeet. So the 2 international games are like what they shoot clay targets in the Olympics. And so my specialty was an Olympic skeet shooter or international skeet shooter. And so that's where, I went on and at university and was able to help my team win, I don't know, 4 of the 15 national championships that team won in a row.
Wow. And I'm always interested in performance and growth and learning. What is involved, just in general sense, in getting good at that? I mean, managing heart rate, do you exercise? Like, what do you do to get good besides just shoot?
So I should have exercised and done a lot of those more physical things, but in college, it's not always what I did. But ultimately, it's a lot of muscle memory. So with shooting, especially international skeet specifically, to get into the specifics of the game, you actually start with a low gun. So you'll have a line on your vest about down there, like at the bottom of your elbow.
Okay, bottom of your elbow, yeah.
And so then you have to start with the tip of your buttstock below that line. And so then when you call for the target, it can come instantly or up to a 3-second delay. And then the target will appear and come out. So you can't jump before you see that target. If you jump, you have to get your gun back down below that line. Otherwise, it's a foul and a lost target. So anyway, so there's a lot of discipline in really, in the movement of how you get that up to your shoulder, of not jumping. And if you do, get it back below. Anyway, so there's a lot of mental discipline is really what it comes down to. A lot of muscle memory that comes into it.
It sounds like a lot of grinding fundamentals.
It is absolutely a ton of grinding fundamentals. And a lot of those lessons, it's interesting, we talk about this now, around how I manage my brain, which I've undiagnosed, probably ADHD, but how I manage my brain in order to get my body to do what I need it to do. I still apply a lot of those tactics today that I did from back then. So it's a very strong mental management and mental discipline.
Wow. I mean, I want to learn about those principles that carried over, but within all this stuff, while you're being an athlete, I see this entrepreneurship club in there. So tell me about that.
So that was brand new, like my senior year. And, really looking back on it, it's really just it was a group of people who were entrepreneurial minded and just want to start business, but you're seniors in college. And what we probably should have done is just start business, rather than sit around and talk about it. But yeah, so that is not much of a whole story there. But yeah.
Yeah. So you've always, I mean, I guess the point is you always had an interest in entrepreneurship. So with your, I guess your initial, into the workforce, you work for your, is it a family drywall business?
It is. So yeah, the commercial construction Wies Drywall and Construction Corporation. My grandfather named it that in 1971. So yeah, I am a third generation in that business. And yeah, I mean that's really where I started. I started sweeping the floors there when I was 12. I was supposed to start when I was 11, but I broke my ankle on a bicycle that first day of summer. So yeah, that's all I've ever known. But even just being a little kid, I can remember being a kindergartner, right? And looking at back at some of my work that my parents kept, seeing like, I've always ever wanted to do business, right? With a heart of uh, taking care of our people, taking care of families. That's kind of
Yeah. I
my own
mean, you came
thing.
up through the ranks. It's a family run business. What was your sort of stamp on the business? Because obviously there's some sort of transition where I think you're very much involved in running the day to day. I mean, what did you institute in the business?
You know, that's probably, I really don't know. I don't have a great answer to that. It's just a flow of consciousness. So I'm very teams focused, and I like to have really good, high quality, trusted people in our company. Because I know for me, again, getting back to mental management, right, and then also really diving into me as a person. I know all of the areas that I'm weak in. I also know all the areas that I'm strong in. And so at any given time, I like to obviously have people who are way strong in my weaknesses and also have similar strengths to me as well. So we can bounce things off of, right? And so, for me, it always comes down to the team. And, for the last probably 10 years or so, I've been bringing a lot of the people in, and recruiting, and then also just allowing them, as we've kind of continued to help me bring more people into our company as well who are really high caliber, who fit the culture. I'm just huge on cultural fit. If they don't fit our culture, they're probably not going to work out.
Sure. And in terms of recruiting, what sort of methods have you used?
All of them. We recruit from, I've hired recruiters. We do internal promotions, bring people up through the ranks of the field into the office. Uh, Try to like friends of friends, all the different ways we recruit.
What's the most interesting creative way someone's found their way into the company?
You know, so into the company, probably I haven't really had too many of those interesting from my perspective, but kind of there's always a historical, like my grandfather there was a bunch of stories around that. My grandfather was an incredible entrepreneur, right? And also, just like most entrepreneurs, he ran by the seat of his pants all the time, and inherently is always behind. So anytime that he would have an interview with somebody, and these are guys that have now worked at our business for, 40 years at this point, 30 and 40 years, it would just be like, you know what? I just pretty much I waited Bob out. There's multiple stories out there like that. My grandfather's name was Bob, like where he was like 3 hours late and I just sat there and waited for him because I wanted a job, and here we are 40 years later. And that's how I got a job here is I waited out your grandfather. So it's kind of funny.
Like you go back to your mental management and things that you carry through to your shooting days. What are the things that stay with you?
Positive self-talk is one. In those days, it's really easy to get in a funk and it's really easy to see all the negative things and then just start beating yourself down. But knowing that you're doing the best with what you can, right? And we can always get better. I'm my own biggest critic, but I don't need to have a toxic mindset around that. And the other one I do a lot of is just visioning. Pretty much every night before I lay down or before I go to sleep, I should say, I close my eyes and I start running through kind of, my next 5 to 10 years of what I want our business to look like, what I want my life to look like. And I just replay these things over and over and over again, and, ultimately it's like, I pray a lot as well. I didn't necessarily then when I was shooting, but that's kind of those same things that coincides. It's like I need God's will to line up with my vision because I feel that He's given that to me. So yeah, I mean, but visioning is huge though because it's not like a weird you get in some interesting spots with like manifesting and things like that. It's not really about that. I view it more as it's like preparing your subconscious for almost not sabotaging
Mm.
the path, right? So that way, when you do accomplish your vision, oftentimes as humans, we are always gonna, and you see this a lot in shooting, right? Or in these very high pressure situations where somebody can just kill it in practice all the time, do very good, but then they get to competition and they struggle, right? They choke. Why? It's because they were not prepared to win.
Mm. Yeah, I
And
remember.
somewhere along the way they crack. Go ahead.
Yeah, I heard a coach that used to practice or got his players to practice the victory speech, and that sounds very cocky. But he was saying that some people are very uncomfortable in the situation where the attention is on them, and when they're on the 17th or 18th green, when they just start, think about that for 1 second, that they sabotage themselves because they're uncomfortable with what comes next if they win.
That's right. And that looks different in everybody's life, right? I'm talking about this from a business perspective, but I mean, it could be anything, right? It could be when you're a parent. It could be, in a marriage. It could be in any of these different things, your sport. It's, we will self-sabotage because we're not comfortable with whatever it is in our brain. Maybe it's winning, but maybe it's going home to tell your parents that you won and you don't, whatever. There's all kinds of different traumas there, or whatever it is. So yeah, we will self-sabotage.
Yeah. So tell me about this newer venture that you're doing.
So our prefab, right? Is that what you're
Yes,
talking about?
I
Yeah.
think
So
so. Yeah.
yeah. So Wies Offsite. So what's funny is historically speaking, I get a lot of guys in our company saying, "Well, what would your grandfather say about what you're doing now?" So I started it's a prefab facility. So we make our own metal studs and we componentize construction off of a 3D model. So right now we're up to, let's call it 5 3D modelers in house. And we get architectural drawings and we'll get their 3D model, the Revit files typically, and then we'll go through and we'll layer in and create a level of design drawing to like a 450 level, which essentially means we're putting screws into studs and walls and models in the 3D model. So it's a very in-depth ingrained 3D model. And so when we start doing that, we start spinning off all kinds of RFIs or requests for information from architects and general contractors. So when we put these processes in jobs, we get the majority of the job figured out before our guys even step on site. And then we take that model, roll that into our facility where we make all the different parts, pieces, and components of walls, the headers, the walls, panels, however we can do that. And so I get pushback a couple years ago from our team in some regard on, what would your grandfather think? And so of doing this, right? And I'm like, well, are we talking about the 80-year-old grandfather? We're talking about the 40-year-old grandfather. My
Mm.
40-year-old grandfather in the early 70s, we were doing a lot of these same things that we just do in a facility now, just out on site. So I don't know, that's a long way to answer your question, but we componentize construction now, and that looks different. We do that for our main drywall business. We have clients where we just componentize things for. right now, and yeah, it's seeing some pretty incredible growth trajectories there. And we've been at this for just about 2 years right now.
Yeah. And when you start a business, there's a lot of learning. What are the lessons?
Oh man. So I mean, just being fairly, I'm very fortunate in that I did have a lot of business experience. But ultimately, it's like I thought I was going to start this business with pretty much like one general manager slash shop foreman, right? And so we kind of trained two people on doing this, and then kind of they both stuck around, right? Very quickly. It was like, okay, we're going to train another guy on like how to run the machines, but our one main guy is going to kind of do all that, and the second guy just never left. Uh, Gosh, there's so many things. How to ship stuff, how to package things correctly, how to when we started this business, the specific process is that model, 3D environment to reality. And so there's a lot of stuff in between those two, and so how do we order things correctly so the guys in the field can really understand how to build it, and everything's labeled and, but just getting that general process down. Um, how do you scale that? I mean, that's where I'm at right now. We're looking for project managers right now and just, making sure that we get the right people again that are cultural fit in the door, that have also the technical skills that we're looking for. Um, I had to figure out how to buy coil steel, so we went from buying steel, for example, just from our normal construction distribution yard, right? Construction supply house to now, how do I buy steel coil from the foundry, right? And, we have all the specs on the steel that we need that we order to, but it's like, how do you do that, right? So now my steel broker is one of my best friends, and so it just, all those different things, man. There's so many. It's just when you start taking, we went from a traditional construction company to now a manufacturer, and it's a very different mindset, right? It's different skills. How do we deal with all the different certification processes, and how do we make all those repeatable? So that way we really understand and know what we're doing. So I'm very fortunate that we didn't start up right out of the gate with just an overload of work, because we would have screwed up so many things. We're like 2 years in right now, and now we're starting to be overloaded. And, but our team, we've created that plan over the years, right? We've gotten the reps in on how to just run our equipment super well and efficiently, what the workflows look like and should be downstream, and how to get everything output, out the door and packaged correctly. And yeah, I don't know if that's what you're looking for, but
Yeah, and so and also I'm always you talk about it from the offsite business, but what did you have to do to make sure, because you're splitting time between your two companies? What did you have to do to be able to manage that transition? Because now 2 years out, it sounds like you operationalized, but how are you able to carry both those roles?
so I don't really look at it that it's any different. Just for me, our prefab facility and our prefab business is really just another strategy on how we can go accomplish the same job in the field.
Mm,
But again, I assemble teams. So we have a really good team over at our drywall business. And I'm fortunate that I still have my dad over there who's in there every day and kind of looks after things over there, right? And we've just got a phenomenal team. We've got a great controller. We've got really good operations people, and and then over here, I'm still building this team, but we've got a stellar team here. And I know for me, it's like there's I'm really good at starting businesses, right, and getting them from kind of a 0 to 2 or 3 range, but I'm not your getting them from 3 or 5 to 8 or 10. I am then part of that process, and I give our team my ideas and my interpretation and my inflections, but at the end of the day, I empower them to take this and run with it though too. So it's like, hey Dan, we need a whatever this tool. I'm like, great. Let me research a little bit too. Let me see if there's anything better, right? Because I always have a different. But it's like, nope. Okay. After 2 hours of that, it's like, all right, is it here yet? Order it. Let's get it here. Whatever you need.
Yeah,
So then just enabling the team to go and
yeah.
do
Sounds like a serving mindset.
100%. My job here is to remove roadblocks from the team.
Yeah. I mean, what's the future look like? Because you have the business, the extension, or the sort of the new strategy. What does it look like 5 or 10 years from now?
You know, it's going to look even more. I think industrialized construction is how we're going to continue to go to market. It's how we're going to continue to build buildings in whatever that looks like. I mean, because this is ever evolving. So all these practices that we're doing now have been around, again, since probably the early 70s and probably even before that, right? 60s, 50s, you can probably trace them back a long time before that. What's really helped us and changed us is the technology that we can enable this, right? So I think what you're going to see is we're going to see the speed of information getting back into our 3D models quicker. I can imagine a time when we have a drone on site that has enough sensitive enough sensors on it that we can have them fly daily or hourly, right? And get real-time point clouds back, and then be able to have our models inflect with that to be able to make those adjustments on the fly. And really getting into more just-in-time delivery method. And all of these things are going to be able to, cut costs, cut time out of projects. I think we're just going to see more industrialized construction. But I know people will give me pushback on that. We're always going to need plenty of field help, right? We're always going to need plenty of construction workforce. I'm a people-centric person. And so, we always need a great, amazing team, and we're always going to need people.
Yeah, makes sense. Hey, Dan, is there anything that I did not ask you, but you wanted to share?
I think around leadership, that I'm very passionate about leadership in teams.
Yeah, tell me your
For the
thoughts.
leaders out there, just trust your teams, set them up for success, remove the roadblocks from them, listen to them, be with them through the highs, put your arm around them in the lows. I think just being an empathetic leader is really important. And then, just developing that team, holding them accountable, also being their biggest cheerleader, but then also, gently give them a boot in the butt when they need it. But I don't yell at them, don't scream at them, right? Unless they really, really, really deserve it. I've probably yelled twice in my 17 years here at somebody. But ultimately, yeah, just be the best leader you can. Read books, get better, listen to podcasts, right? Whatever it is. We should always be improving, constant improvement.